The male protagonist's name is Takumi Kino. Just a few days ago, he was living as a normal Japanese person, but now he's fighting 3 monsters to survive. Fortunately, they're only sea-level monsters. Otherwise, with such numbers, it would be truly overwhelming. Takumi used one technique to efficiently handle the monsters and store them in his space. The incident recalls the past when Takumi first crossed into this world. Shinfiren, who was related to Takumi's death, knelt down and cried. He explained that he was trying to fix a damaged space after using it too forcefully, and somehow it affected Takumi. To make amends, Shinfiren brought the man to this world. Since he was a god and this place was under Shinfiren's jurisdiction, this was simple. He created a new body for the young man, nearly identical to his original form in real life. Not only that, Shinfiren also designed and installed many skills. Just then, a sound brought him back to reality. In front of him appeared 2 identical twin children. Takumi greeted them kindly but was completely ignored by the kids. He decided to check their information himself and learned they were 5 years old but didn't have names. Takumi spontaneously named one Erwin and the other Elena. The protagonist noticed the children looked ragged, and without hesitation, gave them food and new clothes. Takumi thought that having just 2 children here would be dangerous and unsafe, so he actively suggested they go with him. The children said nothing, just silently followed behind. The protagonist sensed that he felt very close to and particularly concerned about these 2 children. Afraid that Elena and Erwin couldn't keep up, Takumi gradually slowed his pace. Suddenly they encountered a monster. Takumi worried the children were in danger and was about to protect them when surprisingly, the twins rushed straight ahead. The live performance made Takumi's eyes widen in surprise. Before he could recover, the twins delivered a kick that made the monster collapse on the spot. Takumi almost applauded to praise the 2 children. Throughout the long journey that followed, he never had a chance to show off because he had 2 capable assistants. As night fell, they gathered around a fire, roasted meat, and ended the tiring evening. After eating, Takumi held the children in his arms, soothing them to sleep. The 3 of them spent a truly fulfilling day together. By the next morning, they finally reached the city gate. Security was very strict. The guards asked where they came from, and after receiving the answer that they came from the thorn forest, they were very surprised. Everyone knew that place was a dangerous A-level territory. How could a young man and 2 children possibly survive out there? Takumi explained that he only carried out a mission at the edge of the forest. Thanks to his clever evasion, Takumi successfully escaped suspicion. When it came to identification documents, all 3 were confused because none of them had any. They were allowed to complete the procedures at the counter. There, everyone was asked to hold a crystal ball, the purpose being to see if anyone had a criminal record. But what could a person who had just crossed from another world and 2 children have done? The group of 3 passed the inspection easily. They were given temporary documents and told to go to a nearby residence to make official papers. Then the protagonist continued to move to a church. Upon arrival, Takumi told the kids to wait outside while he approached a statue. It was Shinfiren. He sat down to pray. Connecting with him, Shinfiren took the man into a mystical space where only the 2 of them could hear. Takumi told the whole story about the thorn forest and also mentioned the 2 children. He said he couldn't raise them. Hearing this, Shinfiren immediately objected. It turned out that he was just testing him. It seemed this god knew something about the children. Takumi thought it might be related to the 4 remaining gods. Shin said these children were not ordinary people. Theoretically, they were very dangerous. That's all he could tell him. Takumi said he would continue to raise the 2, and then took their hands and led them outside. They rented a room nearby together. Seeing the comfortable bed, the children happily lay down, so the 3 of them slept on the same bed straight through until the next day. Early in the morning, the protagonist opened his eyes and saw that Erwin and Elena were already awake. The protagonist instinctively said good morning, surprised that today the 2 children returned the greeting. This was the first time after contact that the children were willing to talk to Takumi. Today, the first thing he did was immediately go to the guild. There were many people there, making the children both scared and surprised. After resolving the paperwork issue, the man was given an explanation by the staff. In this world, guilds have levels from F to S, equivalent to ranks from newcomer to hero. There's also SS rank, but currently, no one has the ability to reach that. Because he had defeated several monsters, the protagonist's current level was 11. The protagonist received his first mission, to go pick a type of grass. The 3 of them entered a forest and began working. Takumi instructed the children how to do it. The intelligent kids learned immediately, and in no time, the harvest exceeded expectations, even surprising the guild staff. Finally, they received their first salary, when suddenly a spiky-haired man approached. He provoked the protagonist for no reason, only to end up being beaten by the children. The protagonist hurriedly tried to stop them but was too late. The next moment, the soldier they had met outside the city gate walked in. Someone, seeing trouble brewing, quickly pulled the troublemaker away. When he turned back to look at Takumi, he saw the two children whimpering. They were anxiously begging the man not to abandon them. Thinking back, it was probably because Takumi's raised voice had frightened the children. After calming down, everyone began to introduce themselves again. It turned out the soldier's name was Grandvlogen, the captain of the kingdom's second protection team. They also accidentally learned that the two children were not the protagonist's children. Thinking about a slave caravan that had recently passed nearby, it was quite possible that the two children belonged to that slave group. There was a possibility they had been left behind as bait after the wretched bunch was attacked. After a while, he decided to adopt the children as their guardian. Thinking about Takumi coming out of the thorn forest and even handling red wolves made her very excited. The guild asked if the man had harvested anything. Somehow the protagonist had gained a considerable amount of money after exchanging some items from that forest. Only now did the soldier remember he had come here to discuss with the guild leader about the frontier patrol. That was the job of entering the thorn forest to eliminate monsters and prevent them from overflowing outside. Because it was in a level forest, there was a severe shortage of manpower, and the red-haired man designated the protagonist to participate. Thus, Takumi became inadvertently yet deliberately entangled in trouble. Logan went up to the guild leader's office to present and discuss the issue of this frontier patrol, requesting a special person to participate the protagonist. The guild leader was surprised as he had never heard this name before. After learning this was a newcomer, he was completely distrustful. The soldier assured him not to worry. Logan dared to guarantee this was not an ordinary person like those mediocre ones out there. Thus, they became accustomed to the rhythm of life here. At first, Erwin and Elena were timid, but now they were gradually opening up. Currently, they were eating breakfast in the room, with the protagonist lamenting that he suddenly craved sweet pastries with filling from his old world. The children couldn't help but wonder, and without hesitation, they decided to go to a nearby bakery. When entering the shop, he gave the employee some jars of cakes and asked if they could make them. The girl didn't dare agree and had to ask her father, Mr. Roeder. Having been in the profession for many years, he had never encountered such a request and didn't know how to make it. Seeing this, he decided to roll up his sleeves and show everyone his talent. Everyone worked together to make several batches of delicious cakes. Erwin and Elena were also very skillful and enthusiastic in helping. After taking them out of the oven, they all tasted them together. Everyone was surprised by the delicious flavor. The owner asked if he could sell this item in his store, of course, sharing the profits with him. The protagonist quickly refused because he only needed to eat the cakes himself. Anyway, this wasn't a recipe Takumi came up with, so everyone was happy. The next morning, the protagonist with the name White Wings went to the guild to receive a mission. The manager asked why he didn't go to the labyrinth. According to what the protagonist knew, this world had 108 labyrinths, and near Shinfiren, there was also a 15-level labyrinth. The three of them decided to try exploring it. She was very surprised because even walking would take half a day, and to thoroughly explore, even a few days wouldn't be enough. Takumi said he just wanted to try a few levels for the experience first. So, White Wings headed toward the labyrinth equipped as if going on a picnic. Because of the two children, everything was very favorable. Their sensing abilities far exceeded imagination. Each time they pointed in the same direction, they never got lost. In no time, they had descended to the third level. Here, the protagonist encountered a very cute mole monster. Takumi was still checking the danger level of it when the two children quickly defeated it. The monster was defeated and dropped an item, the mole's whisker. Afterward, the three cooked and ate right in the cave without any reservations. The two children were again held in the protagonist's arms. They were also tired and fell asleep immediately. The next few days were the same familiar work: fighting monsters, cooking, and then sleeping. In no time, they had descended to level 10. Here, he found a treasure chest which contained 2 bottles of potions, one for restoring physical strength and the other for healing wounds. This harvest was pretty decent. Suddenly, without warning, a giant monkey appeared behind them. It didn't have time to do anything before being knocked unconscious, dropping its fur as an item. He thought that all the abilities the two children displayed were too wonderful. From sensing calculations to fighting, everything seemed more instinctive than trained. Somehow, monsters appeared more and more frequently. A clay earthworm came from somewhere. Takumi told the children that he would handle it, as well as to explore his stone-throwing skill. Of course, it was no match for him as it was flattened before it could do anything. Erwin and Elena also signaled for him to sit down, reaching out to pat his head as a form of praise. Hearing a noise, a swarm of bees flew in, and of course, the twins quickly took action. Since this type wasn't poisonous, he let the children play to their heart's content. After defeating them, the product that dropped was honey. Seeing this, he immediately opened a cooking class right on the spot. This time's dish was butter toast with honey sauce, super delicious. The two children were extremely happy, eating voraciously. Thus, bees continuously sought out the White Wings team. It seemed they could smell the familiar honey scent. But these weren't opponents for the protagonist, so they were completely defeated. The result was a mountain of honey piled up. Finally, they reached the 15th floor, which was also the last floor of this labyrinth. The door opened, they stepped inside, and welcoming Takumi was a super giant worm. This was probably the final boss of this labyrinth. Seeing this, he also neatly launched into battle. It was stronger than the others, so it didn't die from the first hit, but had to wait until the third move before it died. Many valuable items dropped. He put them in his storage and moved toward the nearby door. Inside was a teleportation staircase back to the first floor, along with a treasure chest. When opened, inside were bombs used for detonation. Indeed, those twins were not ordinary people, yet they dared to pick up bombs to play with. He hurriedly stopped them, reminding them to place their hands on the orb to teleport back. Finally, they exited the labyrinth. At this moment, an S-level wolf appeared from afar. But looking at its behavior now, it was no different from a puppy. When he checked the information, he learned that this was an animal contracted with him. Thinking it must be arranged by the god Shin, he wasn't surprised. He, along with Erwin and Elena, named it Jun. Since monsters couldn't suddenly appear in the city, especially S-level monsters, he had the idea to tell Jun to hide in his shadow. Next, they headed toward the church area to ask Shin for clarification. The surprising thing was that he himself didn't know where it came from. There was a possibility that the water god sent it to thank him for the matter of the two children. Shin was annoyed because the water god had sent something first, so he told him to go to the middle of the field tomorrow to receive a divine beast. The next morning, when they arrived at the location, before them were a white tiger and a bird of high rank. Who would have thought that the wind god would be so competitive? Erwin and Elena also wanted him to name these two animals. After thinking for a while, the protagonist decided on Fit and Bon. This made the two children jump with joy. The two divine beasts were also very friendly with the little ones. He searched in his space for pet collars, unfortunately meeting the twins' eager eyes wanting to try them on. He said these could only be worn by animals. If the children wore them, he would probably be suspected of child abuse. Seeing their disappointed eyes, he couldn't bear it. Once again, Takumi searched through his space storage and coincidentally found two collars that suited them perfectly. The claw-shaped collar could neutralize magic, while the other could nullify external forces and track location. The children's faces brightened up, and best of all, the animal collars could adjust their size. When shrunk, they looked no different from a dog and a white cat. Looking non-threatening like this, they could easily enter the city normally. As for Bon, he would stay in his shadow. In no time, they arrived at the city gate. But this time the children had travel passes, so the protagonist's group entered the city smoothly. When passing by a toy store, Elena stood staring blankly for a long time. After all, she was still a child, a girl, so being attracted to this was inevitable. Seeing this, he led the twins inside. This was a paradise that any little girl would like, and Elena was no exception. With all kinds of colorful ribbons, the protagonist had an idea to tie ribbons in Elena's hair. After finishing, the shop owner was also surprised by how adorable and pretty the little girl looked. She also chose a black ribbon for him. Witnessing this, the protagonist was touched and immediately agreed, even though he knew he couldn't use it. Next, Takumi asked Erwin if he liked anything, but just thinking about wearing ribbons on his head made him shake his head vigorously. After all, he was a boy, so he naturally wouldn't pay much attention to these things. The shop owner, seeing how adorable the two children were, didn't hesitate to bring out all the clothes for them to try. The result was that because they were so cute, he also bought an additional set. The owner also very happily welcomed them to come again next time. That night, after the children fell asleep, He lay on the bed thinking that next time he must buy something for Erwin. The protagonist didn't want either of the two to feel left out. The next morning, after breakfast, they decided to set out for a new mission. That was to enter the thorn forest to eliminate monsters along with the army soldiers. When they arrived at the city gate together, the White Wings team met the red-haired captain and his deputy, Isaac. After chatting for a while, they decided to set off. But the protagonist, with the extrasensory ability given by the author, sensed someone watching them. It seemed the twins also noticed this. He thought simply that the children were too eye-catching, being so young yet already adventurers. This also made people curious and pay attention, discussing eagerly among themselves. Once inside, they split into 3 teams and began to act. Just as they entered the edge of the forest, Takumi's group immediately encountered a fierce red wolf. Before they could do anything, the twins rushed forward and attacked furiously. With just one move, they defeated the sea-level red wolf. This astonished everyone by how formidable they were. Next came a group of orc monsters. Instead of everyone fighting as a team, Takumi, following his solo philosophy, easily handled one by himself. This was the second time that made everyone question the identity of the 3. At the same time, a red flare was shot into the sky. It was very likely that another team was in danger. He used his special skill to ride the wind and leap straight to the location. The whole process left everyone astonished with their mouths agape, and he arrived just in time. Noticing someone was injured, he and the 2 children quickly moved forward to handle several small wolves. One by one, the wolf carcasses piled up into a mountain. When everyone arrived and saw this scene, they were terrified by the formidable power of the 3. Time and again, the White Wings team made them question whether they were ordinary people. The twins were praised profusely, very happily accepting it. However, at this moment, the protagonist sensed the familiar energy that had been following them that morning. It seemed the 2 children also sensed it, worriedly burrowing into his arms. The captain noticed something and inquired with concern, but he just said it was nothing. Anyway, there was no need to worry outsiders. After a full day, they camped in the forest to prepare dinner to fill their empty stomachs. Unfortunately, no one here knew how to cook, including girls, boys, adventurers, and knights. He had to put a huge question mark in his head. How could they have survived until now? Everyone said they just cooked randomly to have something to fill their stomachs, not following any recipe, which made the protagonist throw up his hands. Importantly, the twins were in their growing years, so as a professional child raiser, he had to pay special attention to the children's nutrition. With no other choice, our protagonist had to take action himself. First, the man took out ingredients from his storage. Then he guided everyone on how to properly prepare and clean them. The result didn't disappoint anyone. Everyone ate deliciously. Thus, a pot full of food was quickly devoured clean. Early the next morning, everyone looked at Takumi with sparkling eyes. As expected, the protagonist became an unwilling chef making breakfast for the whole team. Afterward, they continued their journey. But now everyone could sense something very strange in the forest. Yet they had been walking for a long time without encountering any monsters, contrary to yesterday when many monsters appeared at the edge of the forest. Perhaps something frightening was hiding here. Because yesterday his team had rescued another injured team, today for safety, everyone walked together. The leader of the 3rd team, named Tierra, actively greeted and thanked the protagonist for saving her the day before. At this moment, once again, the man sensed those eyes staring intently at him. With the children's sensitive perception, they also quickly discovered this. They fearfully looked around, their hands unconsciously tightening. He could only hold the twins in his arms to comfort them. This was his familiar action that made them feel secure. At the same time, a giant monster as tall as a 5-story building blocked their path. Because he was busy paying attention to that gaze, he couldn't focus on sensing. This caused an oversight. When the 2 children were about to rush forward, he stopped them just in time. For high-level monsters like this, it could harm Erwin and Alina. He and everyone rushed forward to fight, but all physical attacks and magic had no effect on it. The protagonist was so engrossed that he forgot to pay attention to the 2 children. Unexpectedly, the twins had somehow clung to the body of the beast. With one move, it flung the children away, making him extremely worried. But at this moment, Takumi couldn't run to their side because it would attract attention. This was the time he had to fight with all his might. Takumi asked everyone to distract its attention, while he performed his level wind magic to prepare for a counterattack. After accumulating enough spiritual power, it was like one person directly confronting one beast. But of course, the beast couldn't avoid being cut into pieces. and because he used too much spiritual power, it also cut the surrounding trees in half. The place where Takumi stood was deeply sunken, and everyone around who saw it was surprised and gathered around him. They took the opportunity to harvest the blood of this beast because it was very rare. He frantically went to check on the children with a worried face, and also didn't forget to thank Iris for healing them. The man finally determined what that murderous gaze was. Without hesitation, Takumi quickly rushed over and put his sword to a man's throat. He panicked, his hands and feet trembling as he collapsed to the ground. Everyone was confused, not understanding what was happening, when Takumi spoke up to explain. From the beginning until now, those gazes were from him, but unfortunately, he kept denying it. Captain Rudolph, who also realized this, stepped up to defend his honor, saying that staring at someone and causing them to be distracted during combat was very dangerous. It could even be fatal if unlucky. It turned out his name was Sages, and ironically, because he liked the captain, he saw the protagonist as his love rival. This made the protagonist very confused, his head spinning with all sorts of thoughts. Takumi had to defend himself that like here meant admiration, not foreseeing it as male-to-male love. This also made our red-haired captain very embarrassed. Logan said he only liked girls, but this didn't make Sages lose hope. Since it was now afternoon, everyone was getting hungry. So everyone pleaded for him to cook dinner. Having gone through what just happened, it really spoiled his mood, but because the twins spoke up, he couldn't refuse. In the evening, the night captain came to apologize for what happened that afternoon. Because the twins had agreed to forgive, he didn't hold a grudge either. Logan said that because too many people were injured, the frontier patrol would end early tomorrow. He could return to the guild to receive his reward. They very much hoped to continue cooperating with Takumi next time. When returning to the guild, Luna quickly excitedly greeted him, without delay, immediately pulling Takumi before the guild leader, Siren. Even he didn't expect that the person before him would have such talent. Looking at him, he really didn't look like a strong person, so it also made him somewhat doubtful. But because he was recommended and vouched for by two trustworthy high-level people, he must be somewhat extraordinary. Knowing that the protagonist had eliminated an S-level monster, but now leveling up so quickly was very suspicious. Therefore, the guild leader could only place him at a level. The noteworthy thing here was whether to rank the children up or not. If too high, they would attract attention. After thinking for a while, he decided to place the two at D rank. If averaged together, his White Wings team was C level and could receive B level missions, which was not too unfair. Afterward, Takumi was led outside by Luna to complete the procedures. When looking at their cards, she was very surprised because in a very short time, his group had managed to clear the labyrinth with just one visit. And this further confirmed the potential power of the White Wings. She quickly frantically asked about the items obtained. The woman led him to a place large enough to bring out the monster. After discussion, he decided to keep 1-3 for food and equipment. Then all three went home, being too tired. When lying down on the bed, he fell asleep. The twins smiled, wishing him a good night's sleep. Today was a free day, so he took the children out to play. Lying on the lush green grass watching them play, Takumi could feel peace in his heart. Especially between the twins and his contracted divine beasts, they were very harmonious. Erwin even came up with the idea of teaching the white tiger to communicate. It seemed absurd, but Fit very seriously learned. Returning home, he helped the children distinguish coins and calculate. Being children, they couldn't avoid being deceived, so this was a necessary skill. Not only that, Elena and Erwin were very cooperative and extremely intelligent. Just teaching them once, the two children understood everything and successfully calculated the examples he gave, and they planned to practice by going to the market to buy things. When arriving in front of the fruit stall, the twins were very polite when buying and paying. The shop owner didn't spare praise, making our protagonist so happy he almost ascended to paradise. Afterward, he took the children to a library. Here, the twins were overwhelmed by the enormous number of books. Now they couldn't use water energy yet, so they had to come here to learn more and be able to control it smoothly. He asked the twins if they wanted to learn to read, and of course received a very interested look in return. The woman who was the owner of the library also came over. She praised the two children for being very good, and surely the person teaching them must be very hardworking and passionate, making Takumi feel ecstatic. Today ended a gentle day where everywhere they went, they received encouragement, making him feel he needed to try even harder. On the second day, the White Wings team went to the guild to receive a mission. which was to find a lost black cat with white paws named Mina. The divine beasts were also called out from his shadow to search together. They checked the entire city from the ground to the air, but completely failed to find the cat. It seemed the two children had begun to get bored, but still continued searching. After a while, their sensing ability began to beep with signals. The two children pointed in the same direction, so it was very likely the little cat was there. When they arrived, they finally found Mina, but it seemed she was very afraid. The two children immediately played with her, somewhat making the kitten feel safe. The mission was excellently completed, but it seemed Mina was hungry. The protagonist took milk from his storage for it to lap up deliciously. Next was to take it back to its very worried owner. Feeling they had done a good deed, the two children didn't want to stop and continued working. This time, it was a mission to eliminate goblins that were harassing a village. Because this was a difficult mission, no low-level adventurer wanted to take it. As for high-level adventurers, the reward was too meager. Thus, this mission had been backlogged. After accepting it, in no time, the protagonist's group arrived before the gate of the forest village. Takumi was led by a villager to meet the village chief. He was very grateful that he had come to help, yet couldn't believe that someone as small as a twig could do anything significant. Anyway, with such an appearance, no one would not be mistaken. The man showed his information card, which clearly stated he was a level, making the village chief startled in shock. He also very much apologized for his disrespectful behavior. Suddenly, a man frantically ran in reporting that goblins had come to cause trouble. The protagonist quickly ran outside with the two children to fight. When they got outside, there were many goblins harassing the villagers, but before Takumi could take action, his part had been taken. Thus, he completely lost all his screen time, having to give way for Erwin and Elena to shine. And after the battle, now his contracted divine beasts could communicate through mind connection. Suddenly, smoke rose up. Taking the opportunity, he intended to use his water energy. In the end, he had to shamelessly ask for Fit's help to extinguish the fire. The protagonist felt extremely frustrated. Fortunately, the two children knew how to comfort this old brother of theirs. When leaving, all the villagers came out to say goodbye in gratitude. Finally, after a long day, they returned home. Such a day wasn't over yet. Now he still had to teach the children. Suddenly, Takumi remembered they had never been to the sea before. Immediately the next day, he said goodbye to everyone to set off. Everyone felt sorry about that. They were still happy, wishing him a memorable trip and an early return. Just as the protagonist's group was about to leave, an old man appeared from somewhere. He claimed the two children were his goods, making him begin to boil with anger. The twins clung tightly to his clothes. The two children remembered passing through the thorn forest. To protect himself, the old man didn't hesitate to abandon his conscience and throw Erwin and Elena as bait. That unpleasant memory had become a stain deeply etched into the minds of the two growing children. His words made all three people stare in disbelief, unable to trust their eyes. Losing patience, the old man annoyingly repeated that the twins were his slaves, so they should be returned quickly. After a commotion, security also arrived. Seeing this, he immediately played the accusation game, saying the protagonist had taken his belongings. Security didn't understand what this neurotic person was saying, so they asked again. They couldn't believe that there was such a cruel person in the world who would treat children as objects for exchange. Seeing that they were aiding a bad person, they looked away, while the protagonist firmly declared these were his siblings, telling the old man he needed to provide evidence before having the right to speak. At this moment, the captain and deputy captain of the Knight Society arrived, and of course, they stood up to protect him. The old man was neither quickly nor slowly pulled away by security without mercy. The protagonist held the little ones tightly, trying to comfort them. From earlier until now, both children had been trembling with reddened eyes, making his heart ache. Takumi promised himself that he would never abandon Erwin and Elena. Isaac took out a letter of introduction from his person, telling him that after arriving at the destination, he could present the letter to receive help. This surprised him quite a bit, but he didn't forget to thank them for their kindness. The protagonist's group set off for the next destination. When they got close to the thorn forest border, Takumi stopped concealing and called out his contracted divine beasts. Takumi asked them to carry him, while Bon flew in the sky to observe the situation. If people saw the scene of a man riding an S-level beast, there would certainly be a major commotion. And of course, the protagonist didn't want this to happen. Just as they had gone a short distance, a blood bear who didn't know its place dared to block their way. The divine beast said they would handle it, So naturally, the protagonist had to sit quietly and wait. Although Takumi Nu's level was very strong, he didn't expect them to defeat it with just one move. Looking at their eager eyes waiting for praise, the man had to hold back what he was thinking. So everyone continued their journey. The protagonist decided they had to get out of the forest before dark. When they got out, sunset was about to appear, and the protagonist's group quickly set up camp. Today, the protagonist decided to cook egg rice for everyone. Everyone ate deliciously, making the protagonist very happy. When everyone had fallen asleep, only he was awake. Looking up at the sky, watching the stars, he naturally found life peacefully strange. This world had 3 moons, yellow, blue, and red, but in this season, the blue moon didn't appear. This was one of the special things here. 2 months had passed since the protagonist crossed to this world, and because so many things had happened, Takumi hadn't noticed that so much time had passed. The next morning, after breakfast, everyone hurriedly set off again. In no time, they reached a vast expanse of sea, with characteristic white sand beaches and a distant horizon. Everyone was surprised to see this scene, especially the 2 children, as this was their first time seeing the sea. The twins wondered what seawater tasted like and didn't hesitate to try. The result was not unexpected. The 2 children had to shout because it was salty. They played very happily with the divine beasts. At this moment, he heard the voice of a girl, but couldn't see anyone for a while. After a moment, it turned out she was under the sea. Thinking she might be drowning, he panicked, frantically searching through his storage, unable to calmly hear anything she said. After a while, he learned she was a mermaid, and now the protagonist was less worried. Moreover, Momes knew very well about him through a servant of the water god. She even knew about the 2 children. Her appearance here was to ask for his help with something very important for her village. The problem was that the protagonist not only didn't know how to swim, but was also very afraid of water. Fortunately, they had prepared. Each person was given a ring made from mermaid fins. It could help the wearer breathe underwater, and would have a protective membrane to prevent clothes from getting wet. After diving in, the 2 children very quickly learned how to swim. In general, they seemed to really enjoy this, which also made Takumi less worried. So in excitement, he also tested his swimming talent with all types, from doggy paddle to frog style. The painful thing was that no matter how long, the protagonist still made no progress. While concentrating, he bumped into the girl, making both of them embarrassed. He was mesmerized, staring intently at her as if he wanted to devour her. After a moment, he discovered his rudeness and quickly apologized, then continued to descend deeper. Takumi's group accidentally encountered crabs and hammerhead fish. They weren't very strong, so the twins only needed 1 strike to defeat them. She was also surprised by the extraordinary strength that the 2 children had just displayed. Going a bit further, they entered the village. This place was called the Sea Palace, where all mer people gathered to live. Momes took him to a place behind the village, where there was a shipwreck. In addition, when the ship sank, it accidentally blocked the entrance to a coral-growing cave. Not knowing what to do, the shaman princess had been informed by a subordinate of the water god that he could do this work. Not disappointing, in just a minute, he put the entire ship into his space. Thus, the problem was easily solved, and the villagers gathered around to watch the excitement. She said this coral was very important, used to treat many mermaid diseases. If it became extinct, it would lead to a terrible problem affecting the survival of their tribe. Momes took the protagonist's group to meet the shaman princess. Just as the door opened, everyone was surprised by the beauty and cuteness of the mermaid in front of them. The 2 children couldn't help but exclaim, "So beautiful." She came to greet and chat with him. A follower of the water god had told them all about his identity. Fortunately, only 2 people knew, and of course, they wouldn't reveal this secret. The protagonist was a benefactor of the mer people as well as the water god, so he was highly respected. The shaman princess said she knew he was a very kind person, which made him bashfully blush. Luckily, the tribe leader was there to help him out of the situation. At this point, he wondered why they had a tribe leader yet her position still existed. As he understood, this was just symbolic, and she wasn't really interested. They said they wanted to repay this favor, but he quickly dismissed it. He said he just needed help learning water magic, which was enough. They quickly agreed, but the reward would still be calculated separately. After pushing back and forth, arguing back and forth, Momes came up with a suggestion. Although she knew this was disrespectful, these places were very useful to the protagonist. The mermaid took him to a place called their treasure beach. Surprisingly, it was all rare items that humans desired to possess. from pearl eggs as big as eggs with 7 rainbow shells to items like weapons and medicines. They had everything. The 2 children were also very excited when they saw these items. Thus, Takumi had another bountiful harvest. The protagonist's group was treated very well and invited to eat many delicious dishes, accompanied by melodious music and graceful dance. Not only that, the man was also arranged in a luxurious and beautiful room, where he could watch schools of fish swimming outside through glass portals surrounding the entire room. The twins couldn't help but curiously ask the protagonist about all kinds of fish. Takumi also patiently taught the 2 children about sea creatures. This was truly a useful practical experience trip. The next day, he was taken to an island to begin training in water magic. According to the village leader's explanation, earth and wind always exist around us. This is why they can use them easily. However, water and fire are 2 opposite schools. They aren't available everywhere, so they need to learn how to absorb to create them. Because they were at the sea with a power source already available, he only needed to try once on his first attempt to succeed, followed by the twins. Having never used magic before, the first thing to do was to feel the energy source in the body. Indeed, having innate talent, Elena and Erwin succeeded. Next, he taught the protagonist's group the water ball spell. Contrary to his previous up and down failures, now the protagonist could condense and blast away a rock. The twins also tried and quickly succeeded on their first attempt. It was known that to achieve this, even the most outstanding child in the village needed half a day to learn. Hearing this, his face beamed with pride like a father proud of his 2 extraordinarily outstanding children. After finishing the teaching, the village leader and the shaman princess returned first, while the 3 people in Takumi's group stayed behind to continue practicing. Suddenly, something large was emerging from the water. Meanwhile, the wind god was extremely tense. He was scolding the follower of the water god for suggesting that the mermaid tribe ask the protagonist for help. It should be known that until now, the protagonist had helped them too much, so they couldn't be so shameless anymore. After a scolding, he finally let the other follower go. But right at this moment, it seemed something was happening on his side. Back to the protagonist, a giant water dragon emerged from the water. It immediately recognized the twins as the children of the water god. Although he had previously guessed that the 2 were related, when learning the truth, Takumi was still very surprised. The water dragon said that when born, it had the responsibility to protect Erwin and Elena. Due to being in the human world, it couldn't appear casually, which would leave behind a world-shaking event. To apologize, it decided to make a pact with him, but it was only a temporary pact to help the protagonist summon it. Whether to do so or not would have to depend. Afterward, Takumi gave it a name for convenience when summoning, Kaiser. Somehow, the water dragon changed its mind and wanted the 2 children to follow it. He couldn't accept this because since being here, he had become accustomed to their presence. The twins also firmly didn't want to go, so Kaiser had no choice but to give him a dragon scale containing power. It turned out it just wanted to test and confirm the feelings of the 2 children, not actually intending to take them away. Then the dragon let the 3 people ride on its back to return to the village. After watching the water dragon's back fade into the distance, the twins held his hand and entered the sea palace. It was thought they would continue to stay here, but the protagonist had declined. It was also time for them to return to land, making the shaman princess very regretful that she couldn't entertain the man more. So before leaving, she gave him a lunchbox for the journey. The 3 of them left the village, and after a short distance, they encountered many crabs. Like previous times, before they could do anything, the twins knocked them out on the spot. Walking along the monsters, Takumi discovered a medium-level labyrinth. Here, every 10 floors, there would be a teleportation gate. Because Erwin and Elena wanted to explore, he also indulged them. However, they would only go through the first 10 floors, leaving the rest for next time. At this moment, 3 poison frogs who didn't know their place appeared. As expected, the outcome for villains was to be completely eliminated. Although the twins' first attack missed, this made them very dejected. Next, following the guidance of the 2 children, he found a secret room with a door disguised as a wall. After checking that there was nothing dangerous, they began to enter. Inside were many treasure chests filled with all kinds of seafood like red lobsters, white shrimp, dried fish, and many other types. This trip had already yielded a large number of items. Takumi didn't hesitate to decide to cook seafood hot pot right on the spot. The twins really liked eating crab, happily asking him for more. When finished eating, the protagonist decided to set up a tent and rest here. Today, when continuing to explore, this time before them, They encountered a type of shellfish called pact. It would launch shock waves when provoked, so they could only attack from a distance. Unlike before, now the twins could defeat it with just one strike. The protagonist took the opportunity to check the status of the two children. It was surprising because now they were at level 25, while he was at level 27, not far apart. Before this, Takumi had to find a way to level up. Being caught up by two children would make him very self-conscious, and more importantly, afraid of not having enough ability to protect them. While deep in thought, the twins gave him a roll of firecrackers, which was the item obtained after defeating Impact. Because the two were very curious, he also let them see. The result was that because the sound was too loud, it startled the two. Thinking that someday these firecrackers would be useful, he kept them. After walking for a while, they reached the 10th floor. Typically, in each medium-level labyrinth, every 10 floors would have a boss. The three prepared mentally before opening the door. The space here was vast with water. The three only had one way to go, which was across a bridge. The two children weren't afraid of the swaying bridge, continuously jumping forward, playing enjoyably. Suddenly, they sensed the aura of monsters. Not unexpectedly, they were black blind fish. The whole group worked together to eliminate them all. Since these weren't high-level monsters, they were easily defeated. However, due to their large numbers, it also took quite a bit of time. He estimated that about 100 had fallen at the hands of the three. Stairs also began to appear, and the door to escape outside was opened. The two children now sensed something under the water. Having eliminated all monsters, there was nothing to worry about, so all three decided to dive down. When deep at the bottom, the protagonist's group discovered a secret treasure box. Opening it, inside was a mermaid bracelet, the same type that all three of them were wearing. Thinking that having a replacement was good, he quickly stored it in his storage. The protagonist's group went to the teleportation gate to leave the labyrinth. He decided that tomorrow they would go into the city. The next day, the group was standing before a busy market. Erwin and Elena couldn't help being curious about the activities in front of them. The group decided to walk around for a while before going to the temple to greet the god Shin. When passing by a scallop stall, hearing the enthusiastic invitation of the owner also made him move to want to try. Looking at the scallops with just a little salt naturally made his professional instincts itch. Instead of letting the stall owner cook for him, Takumi decided to season according to his taste. And of course, the stall owner readily agreed. He put a little butter on it and a special secret sauce recipe. In just a moment, the aroma had spread around, and very quickly, the scallops were cooked. The stall owner, having never seen this dish before, was also curious to try. Of course, he happily agreed. Just as it touched his tongue, there were no words to describe it. It was delicious beyond description. People around, seeing this, also unanimously responded, wanting to eat. So the only way was for the stall owner to ask him to prepare a bit more. Thus, the line of people grew increasingly longer. Everyone wanted to taste this earthly delicacy. But unfortunately, today's quantity was finished. People could only sadly leave. The stall owner had never seen his goods sold out so early. He expressed wanting to use his recipe, and of course, Takumi agreed, just that the ingredients for the sauce, he would have to find himself. Without a word, in a minute, the stall owner had prepared everything to set off in search of the divine sauce, not noticing that he had forgotten his stall there. The protagonist next also walked by a blacksmith shop. He took out from his person the water dragon scale. He quickly expressed his wish. Unfortunately, what he wanted couldn't be done because drilling a hole would shatter the entire scale. Instead, the owner suggested a brilliant idea to make jewelry. After discussion, he decided to make 3 necklaces as protective amulets. Because the dragon scale was so special, it was very difficult to find matching materials. However, the materials he requested, the protagonist could all take out from his storage. This made the owner and the apprentice in the store repeatedly have to tense up and shout in surprise. When everything was finished, Takumi remembered he had something else he wanted to do. Immediately, he took out from his storage the giant snake he had eliminated in the thorn forest, wanting to use it to make wrist pads. Erwin also very much wanted one, and of course, he didn't hesitate to agree. When finished, he went to the temple to meet Shin. The protagonist couldn't hold back and asked where the father of the 2 children was, to let them go through so many ordeals. Hearing this, the wind god remained silent. Knowing it was difficult to talk about, he didn't ask further. Takumi guessed that the water god wasn't very good. No one would abandon their children without being heartless. Setting that aside, Takumi now officially became a follower of the wind god. It sounded very proud, but actually, none of his work related to it. Instead, his mission was to nurture and educate. True to the name, he would take care of the 2 children. And this fell under the domain of the creation goddess Maria Nola, making Shinfiren feel very jealous. Because he had received blessings from the creation goddess, he was very annoyed because while the protagonist was his follower, he had no related role. Clearly, he was the one who found this talent. Yet he got slapped with the painful fact that wasn't it Shinfiren who accidentally killed him. Now the protagonist only needed to raise the 2 children to successfully complete the assigned mission. Shinfiren also said that the fire god Salamander had sent an item. This was a reward because he had elevated the awareness of this country. It was known that when still in the old city, the protagonist had created a special cake that had now spread to other countries. Moreover, when he came to Berry, he also cooked with butter and sauce, which would soon become popular. Perhaps he didn't know that in this country, for over 100 years, the cuisine hadn't changed. Although there were some variations, they weren't worth mentioning because they weren't special enough. Therefore, all the dishes he spread contributed to a very big change. Thus, the fire god was very grateful to him, as this also fell under the fire god's domain. The fire god said he would grant a contracted beast and fire magic for him to use. Mentioning this made the protagonist very happy. But the wind god's face had completely changed color, becoming gloomy. After a while, when the man had left, the wind god finally began to sulk. He really couldn't tell the man who cared for and loved the children that their father didn't even know anything about his own children, or the fact that their mother was still in Etheridia, now carelessly fooling around with other girls. He also didn't know where that carefree, flirtatious water god was. Right at this moment, the fire god appeared from behind. He had heard the whole story, and then he said he would prepare a special contracted beast for Takumi as a thank you. This was a secret that couldn't be told in advance. The wind god felt that every time something like this happened, nothing good ever came out of it. On this side, he led the 2 children back to the beach to play. Looking at the contracted divine beasts and the children being very close made the protagonist very happy. Suddenly, while feeling touched, he was splashed with water by Bon. Setting that aside, he also competitively joined in playing with the children. Takumi used his water magic to create a bubble slide, which the children really enjoyed, wanting to play again and again. Although a bit tired, this was also an opportunity for him to train his power. While playing enthusiastically, his contracted divine beast arrived. It was a super huge red lion. Takumi named it Vetter. It also really liked this name, rubbing against him to be coy. This image really didn't match at all. The 2 children immediately climbed onto Vetter's back, touching and feeling. The 3 began to introduce their names. In no time, everyone was getting along. The twins and the contracted divine beasts played ball toss. Who could have imagined that S-level divine beasts now were no different from dogs eagerly chasing after the ball to receive praise? When it was Vetter's turn, it ran very far away, confusing everyone. At this moment, it brought back a woman. He thought his divine beast intended to eat humans, and was very scared. It turned out the woman was just unconscious. Perhaps the blood lion had discovered this and brought the woman back here. But he instructed that next time, it shouldn't bite people and carry them away like that. Upon examination, he discovered she was a demon race, more precisely a vampire over 100 years old. Suddenly, Vivian continuously mumbled about being hungry, seeing it was time to set up cooking equipment right on the spot. The delicious smell of food aroused and awakened her. He also very politely set aside a portion for Vivian. Seeing this, she immediately ate like a hungry tiger. This caused the children to imitate her. After eating, they began to introduce themselves to each other. She couldn't believe that food from white rice could be so delicious. More surprisingly, she was a spy. Because of an investigation, she was here, but having forgotten to buy food, she had to manage by picking and hunting. Even so, for several days, Vivi had nothing to eat. Then she fainted and met Takumi. Her mission this time was to investigate the husband of a wealthy lady. He didn't even bother to hide that he was keeping a commoner girl. The twins beside her didn't understand anything but still exclaimed in response. To repay him, she gave him 2 strange bottles of medicine. After checking, the protagonist's face turned as red as a tomato. It seemed he knew what they were, so she didn't explain further. The 2 innocent children beside him asked if they could drink it, which made him feel helpless. She said nothing more, bidding him goodbye and running away immediately. Because of what was just said, the twins wondered what Papa meant. Seeing them call him so naturally, Takumi thought they knew. It turned out that because others called him that, The twins also just called him accordingly, so he educated the two about family knowledge. Afterward, he went into the city to accept a mission. The staff here was also surprised to learn he was an adventurer. After checking, she realized he was level A. Not only that, but he also had the achievement of finding a new labyrinth, making her shout out loud, attracting everyone's attention. At this point, he could only earnestly ask her to lower her voice. Due to being too excited, the girl paid no attention. This also unintentionally frightened the twins. An older man disciplined Karen, making her apologize to him. Because this was the first time the girl had met someone who discovered a new labyrinth, she behaved that way. The protagonist was also very generous to let it go. The man said he would report this matter because the Lord wanted to continue exploring the new labyrinth. He asked if he could help him describe the labyrinth in more detail. It was named Ripple Wave, the 53rd labyrinth located under the sea east of the city. There was also a shop under the sea, which was the labyrinth gate. From the entrance to the labyrinth was a distance of 50 meters. To hold one's breath that long required supportive tools. He was also very curious about how the protagonist had entered. Because explaining about the mermaid bracelet was too troublesome, and to avoid exposure, he made up that his breath-holding ability was very good. The little girl on the side also nodded in support. After all, he was a rank. The man took him to meet Lord Berlin. Here, he accidentally learned that Lord Berlin and Isaac were brothers, because they looked quite similar. The two children had misunderstood, because previously they had said they could kick the captain freely if he was disrespectful again. The two children also casually mentioned it. However, it wasn't clear, making the Lord think his brother had strange preferences, so he had to use all his language skills to explain, although it didn't get anywhere. Afterward, the three were invited in for tea. When the butler was about to close the door, there were two children looking in from outside. This made the twins very curious. Putting that aside, they continued to discuss the discovery of the labyrinth. In this world, labyrinths were no different from gold mines. When they appeared, adventurers would flock from everywhere, thereby increasing income for both restaurants and hotels, and the items obtained could also be sold to the guild, which would then sell them to merchants at high prices. The city would develop on its own. He asked about the progress of exploring the new labyrinth. They couldn't go deeper because the entrance was already too dangerous. Even if they could enter, they had only seen the first floor. Of course, they had a supporting item to help people breathe oxygen underwater. The Lord also mentioned that the person who discovered a new labyrinth would be rewarded. Not wanting trouble, he asked if there was a way to keep his name from being disclosed. This made the Lord feel he was very special. Could it be that he didn't want people to know about him and become more famous? However, there had been such cases before, so Takumi could be completely at ease, but the reward still had to be accepted. When all matters were handed over, everyone prepared to leave. When the guild staff reached the door, they were called back. The Lord had received news that yesterday, someone had leaked information about the adventurer outside. The man immediately apologized for that and said there wouldn't be a next time. He also helped advise, making the Lord calm down, after which the Lord invited him to the dining room. Inside the room were luxurious chandeliers and shiny cutlery. The Lord also introduced his wife and 3 children to him. Because one child was too young, he couldn't come to meet Takumi. The twins, experiencing contact with peers for the first time, were shy and hid behind him. After a while, they also finished lunch. At this point, the Lord mentioned the cake he had created. Because it was too famous, several unofficial recipes had spread to this city. The Lord very much hoped he could disclose the recipe and would reward him appropriately. But for this, he immediately refused. However, currently, there wasn't enough cake for everyone. Because the twins wanted to give up their portions, they said they wanted to eat jelly. This made everyone curious to try. When finished eating, it was really delicious, and they couldn't guess what the ingredients were. At this point, he revealed it was made from slime monsters. This had to go back to a few days ago. After eliminating a bunch of slime monsters, not knowing what to do, he decided to try making fruit jelly, and it succeeded beyond expectations. When people learned about the ingredients, they were startled. The Lord was lucky to have something to show off to his brother. This made him seem so childish. Next, he expressed interest in buying this recipe. The protagonist was also very willing to agree. However, the next crisis approached. Because these ingredients were quite hard to find, they were only low-level items few adventurers would bring back, so they needed to find a stable input source. The Lord now came up with the idea of opening a slime farm. This also made him not submit to this special person's uniqueness. To repay the favor, the Lord decided to let him stay at his house. Despite trying to refuse, the protagonist still couldn't resist his commercial smile, reluctantly having to agree. They also wanted the 4 children to play together more. The other 2 children also expressed hope that the twins would play with them. The ending was that everyone was happy. When it got dark, the 3 returned to their room. The room was meticulously arranged with a very comfortable bed. Early in the morning, Takumi came to greet. The Lord was now sitting reading a letter sent by the deputy. He had boasted to his brother about the new jelly without mentioning the ingredients at all. This made the deputy very angry. The protagonist wondered how they could transport letters so quickly, and the Lord very happily explained. They had magic tools that could teleport objects, with principles similar to the teleportation in Labyrinth. The protagonist never imagined there was such a miraculous thing in this world. Takumi very much admired their brotherly relationship. Although the Lord often teased his brother, he was a person who cared deeply for the deputy. On this side, Isaac felt as if someone was mentioning his name. The captain was now carrying a stack of books out. Seeing his friend's tense face, he curiously asked what was wrong. Since receiving the letter until now, Isaac seemed very different. He told the captain that his brother had announced finding a new labyrinth. The finder was none other than Takumi. Moreover, that person would also be reported to the country. In addition to the slave trading and thorn forest issues, somehow the protagonist would be invited by His Majesty. If something was not satisfactory, he might leave. For the country, this would be a big loss. Not to mention his brother had just been treated to a new type of sweet by the protagonist and would soon start a business with this item. The captain couldn't believe that just arriving in Barry, the protagonist had already created so many waves. He also had to write a letter to his family in the city to prepare a plan if the worst case happened when Takumi was invited to meet His Majesty. The protagonist was now walking with the Lord. Everyone discussed recent events together. The Lord said that lately, there was a new dish making many people line up. Next, he also wanted to take him to taste it. When they arrived, he didn't know what to say, because this was the scallop dish with a recipe he had created. The stall owner recognized him immediately upon meeting. The protagonist's group didn't have to queue and got to taste it right away. This was also the man's way of thanking him for helping his business become increasingly prosperous. The Lord was very surprised that even this dish was created by him. However, also knowing the protagonist's ability, he reluctantly let it go. When tasting, everyone exclaimed it was too delicious. The twins didn't stop and still wanted to eat more. The Lord wondered what this special sauce was, and was explained by him that it was a type of plant deep in the labyrinth. It was mainly sold as an item. Afterward, the Lord went into a shop trading labyrinth items. While he decided to walk around a bit more, the 2 children now also discovered a place selling red beans. He explained to the Lord's children that this was the ingredient used to make the recently popular sweet cakes. When free, he would let them taste it. This made the children very happy and grateful. The Lord now also returned, holding something in his hand. Glancing over, the protagonist saw the logo on it was very familiar. After a while, he finally remembered seeing it on the sunken ship in the mermaid village. The protagonist asked Sirik if he knew anything about the DS Linder ship. The Lord said that was a ship from his company. In the DS Linder shipwreck, fortunately, no one was injured. But in some way, it suffered a great property loss. He said he had found that ship. This surprised everyone. No matter what, it had already sunk. How could it be seen? Along with 1,000 why questions posed to him. After answering all the queries, the Lord asked what he intended to do. Being a good citizen like Takumi, of course, he would return it to its original owner. Since there were still quite a lot of goods on the ship, it could possibly reduce some of the losses. He had checked beforehand, and several things were still intact. They wondered if he would return it completely free of charge. The young man said this was obvious. The answer made everyone freeze for 5 seconds, noting another rare quality from him. In this world, even if lost items were picked up by bandits, by convention, the current holder was the real owner. Therefore, if the person who lost it wanted to find it again, they had to discuss and offer reasonable benefits to get it back. The protagonist was very sorry for this naivety. The director beside him hurriedly shook his head because he had never seen anyone so sincere. According to what was revealed, the energy from that ship was created by a large, valuable magic stone. The cause was that the ship was damaged, leading to flooding. Perhaps the stone would be unharmed. If recovered, it could minimize the damage. He wanted the protagonist to show him the ship to check the goods. He was also very willing to do that. They went to a place large enough to take the ship from space. When the twins were curious, he taught them a lesson about returning found items to those who had lost them. Perhaps in his world, he should also have been awarded a Global Citizen Medal. When they arrived, he took the ship out from his space. The lost ship, just like that, without any cost, appeared right in front of them. This made everyone admire him. After confirmation, this was indeed his ship. He was very grateful because the protagonist had helped them with a big matter. After that, the protagonist became close with Fiji Company. He was personally led by the owner to tour the store. When passing by a small stall that looked very familiar to Takumi, it was coffee beans, which in his old world was called café. For genuine office workers, this was one of the things that could help them relieve stress. And of course, the protagonist was no exception. He immediately quickly bought some. On the way back, he was visibly happy without any concealment. There were many interesting things here. He also found turmeric, cardamom, cilantro, and cloves, truly worthy of being a port city with developed commerce. In this world, common spices were used as medicine ingredients, so they had enough ingredients to make delicious curry. It had also been a long time since he had tasted that dish. Immediately after returning, the three went into the kitchen. Carrie had agreed to lend them the kitchen. The reason was for fear of the smell permeating, so he chose to cook in the yard. First, cut the green onions similar to onions, cut potatoes and carrots into bite-sized pieces. Since there was no pork here, they used orc meat instead. The next step was to stir-fry the meat, and then put it into the broth prepared beforehand. Boil and add vegetables until cooked. Meanwhile, use another pan for spices. Flour and spices were mixed to make curry powder. When there was a fragrant smell, use warmed water to dissolve the curry powder and then pour it back into the pot. Next was to mix well. At this step, the two children would help him perform it. However, a secret ingredient was still missing. In the old way, he would add soy sauce and tomato sauce, but here there was none at all. With a cool head and the brain of a professional cook, he decided to replace it with mashed apples and honey, not forgetting to add a little sugar so that the two children could eat more easily. Now just cook it through, and it would be done. However, he had never been a normal person, so the protagonist took advantage of his fire power to cook food faster. He tasted it when it was just right, then fed the twins a piece each. Not beyond expectation, the two children had to exclaim because it was too delicious. This made him very happy. Because he was engrossed in cooking without paying attention to his surroundings, he didn't know that everyone was watching him. Perhaps attracted by the delicious smell, the Lord had now come over. He introduced this as a dish from his homeland, not forgetting to explain to him about some ingredients. The surprise was that the Lord was very surprised to learn that there were also herbs in it. He also thought that he had to be an unwilling chef once more and cook for everyone. When tasting, everyone was surprised by this flavor. Since there was no rice, they could only eat it with bread that the mansion had prepared beforehand. The Lord's children also didn't spare praise for him. This had made the twins open their hearts more to talk with them. As for the Lord, after finishing eating, his face darkened, silent without saying anything. After a while, he suddenly called the protagonist's name. He slammed the table, stood up, and described the dish with flowery words, like a professional gourmet analyzing the dish. The protagonist didn't know if he had accidentally put something wrong in the food to stimulate the Lord like that. Outside the door at this moment, the head chef also suddenly entered. He couldn't sit still after tasting the dish created by the protagonist. He begged him to accept him as a disciple. The Lord now also opened aside to help him out. A protagonist with such professional skills not cooking would be a great pity. After eating, he and the children discussed his process of becoming an adventurer. The Lord's children loved to hear stories about defeating dragons and adventures. He also indulged them by telling everything. The two children were excited non-stop after hearing. They wondered if the twins who went on adventures with him encountered any dangers. He praised that the two children were very good, making them feel very proud. The next day, to make the four children understand, he took them to a nearby bakery to teach them how to make cream and red bean paste as requested by Sirik. He also took the opportunity to make some new types of bread. They had become more integrated, laughing and playing with each other very happily. When finished, everyone got to taste. Everyone was happy because it was so delicious. They couldn't contain their joy and exclaimed. Even the bakery owner, after eating, followed the head chef in wanting him as a disciple, but was quickly disappointed by being refused. They promised to continue making bread together next time. The twins also very happily agreed. A few days later, they went to a small mountain to play. The contracted divine beasts were also called out. He planned to let Jun and Fit carry them, but Vetter also eagerly competed for the part, so there was an argument between the animals. In the end, Vetter still wasn't chosen. This made it very sad. When reaching a narrow and small section, everyone shrunk to be able to pass through. However, the red lion's body was too large. Even though it had shrunk to the maximum, it still couldn't do anything. But it was carefree, directly running through, causing all the trees to fall. They decided to come here to find a type of herb that could assist in cooking. At this moment, all three sensed many auras approaching. It was a band of robbers. They intended to take all valuable items and had intentions of child trafficking. He knew that letting the twins take action would cause them to be seriously injured, so he had told them to be gentle beforehand. Unexpectedly, before anyone could do anything, the red lion alone had rushed forward using the ultimate technique of pressing people with its body. Even the leader was given a blow by Vetter right on the spot. Afterward, it was also patted on the head and praised by the three. Its face now was beaming with a bright smile. Now, having to return to the city and hand them over to the Night Association for processing would be very troublesome. So he asked the leader where their hideout was. He intended to be stubborn and not tell, but being threatened by the red lion, he had to honestly reveal it. In front of the cave entrance, he had heard the laughter of the bandits inside. When entering, before they could get over their surprise, they were kicked by the twins. Vetter now also eagerly rushed forward to fight. It seemed the more praise it got, the more excited it became. When going deeper down, they discovered a secret basement where there were many treasures that the robbers had stolen. He gathered everything into his space, intending to bring it back to ask the Lord's opinion. At the same time, the twins pointed him to a secret prison nearby. Inside were many women of different ages. They seemed very afraid of him, but fortunately, he spoke up to explain in time. He said he was an adventurer and had come to rescue everyone. At first, they didn't believe, but when they were freed, everyone was happy. They hugged each other, unable to contain their joy, and burst into tears. The red lion now could also communicate through mind connection. It was like a hyperactive child, making the atmosphere of everyone more lively. Currently, they were on the way to the blacksmith shop to pick up the previously ordered items. Of course, all the ordered items were very beautiful and meticulously crafted, making everyone very happy. The shop owner also thanked him very much for giving them such rare things. This was also a very valuable experience for them. When he tried on the gloves, the owner was also very curious, asking if he kept birds. Surprisingly, it was the thunder eagle from the rumors. Every time he came, he brought surprise to the whole shop. When stepping outside, everyone paid attention to the three of them. He suggested temporarily having Bon hide in his shadow to reduce attention. Next, they went to the Sea Palace. Everyone very happily welcomed the protagonists group as honored guests. He asked if he could have more mermaid bracelets. The shaman princess was very worried, thinking he had encountered some problem. When knowing it was for the contracted divine beasts, they were very willing. Takumi thanked them and then continued to explore the labyrinth from before. He used the teleportation stairs to level 10, then continued walking to level 11. Here it was flooded, but because of the bracelets, no one got wet. After walking for a while, they still hadn't encountered any monsters. This made the two children very bored. After a moment, the twins ran quickly to the turn in front, saw several dangerous crocodiles, and still rushed into battle. Both had completely defeated them. Next, he walked while eliminating monsters, simultaneously collecting items. When reaching somewhere without water, they would set up tents, cook, and sleep. When descending deeper, it got colder day by day, causing the two children to sneeze. From his storage, he took out 2 fur coats that he had bought from the store before. At this moment, a gray bear rushed over. It used Water Ball to fight with him, but was completely no match. The three joined forces in 2 moves, causing the bear to become a beautiful fur coat. Because the previous fur coats would not be warm enough when it got colder, he decided to use this fur to make new coats for the two. The twins happily expressed their preferences and suggestions. He also didn't hesitate to accept, but this would require a lot more fur. While thinking, they encountered another species. He was also a bit disappointed because it wasn't a bear. It was one of the largest turtle species here. Akon sprayed many bubbles surrounding them, looking very beautiful but extremely dangerous. Just touching them would quickly explode and fly away. After thinking for a while, he also found a solution, which was to put everything in his storage without having to touch it with his hands. This turtle was smarter than the previous ones. Seeing this, it immediately ran away. The unfortunate thing was that the twins had flipped it over. making it lie flat. Going a bit deeper, they encountered many black crocodiles. The red lion didn't hesitate to rush into battle alone to be praised, but it was too enthusiastic, accidentally stepping into a trap, making everyone helpless. Finally, they also reached the door leading to the boss battle. Stepping inside was an entire beach. Before them was a super huge squid. No matter how much they attacked it, it could immediately regenerate the lost parts, so everyone concentrated their forces simultaneously to beat it to a pulp. Fortunately, this time the squid couldn't regenerate in time, so his group once again triumphed. They went to the secret door. Inside was a treasure chest. When opened, it was a fire element sword, after which he returned to the city. Here, the protagonist was surprised to learn that the captain and deputy had sought him out. Inside the office, everyone began to talk. The deputy said that His Majesty had heard news of a person who had just discovered a labyrinth, but was very modest, not wanting his name to be mentioned. Knowing the two of them were acquaintances of his, he had ordered to invite the protagonist to the palace. As a citizen, he was obliged to comply. The noteworthy thing here was that the children would have to say goodbye to their friends. Looking at the Lord's two children who were very sad, it seemed the twins hadn't realized this yet. He decided that before leaving, he would help the children have a happy time together to create precious memories. He came up with a ball-throwing game that made everyone happy. The captain and deputy also joined in, playing very enthusiastically. After that, it was late at night. When the children were sound asleep, he went to gather and drink with everyone. Now they shed their identities and became close, confidant friends. The captain felt the two children were very attached to him. Although not related by blood, in reality, they were a family that couldn't be separated. This moved him to tears, making everyone gather around to comfort him. Early the next morning, they said goodbye to each other to begin heading to the capital. The twins now realized that they would have to part with their friends. The two children insisted they wanted to stay. He was about to let the Lord take custody until he returned but couldn't bear to. Just as he turned to go, the divine beasts inside jumped out and hugged the two children tightly. After that, the twins had to say goodbye to their friends, and they began their journey to the capital.